At the end of the day, some people prefer to relax with a glass of wine and their favorite TV show, if they have access to the remote control. But other people prefer to keep their hands busy and their minds active. That's what led James Mortlock to leathercrafting.
I stumbled upon a specific YouTuber that did just no talking, just making leathercraft stuff, and it was beautifully shot and the audio was amazing. This was before everyone was putting ASMR across everything. It was just beautiful, and I thought, how hard could it be? Tried it, very hard, and just got less and less bad at it effectively. There's like the kind of creativity side of my I guess of my brain that I don't necessarily always get to explore with every single part of my job, so it's good to be able to flex that sort of creativity side of the brain.
There's something meditative in the hobby for James. Who knew making a wallet could bring you one step closer to enlightenment?
I'm not a big fan of just sitting watching TV and that sort of stuff. I need to be kind of being productive and creative and doing something, so this was good because I could sit on the sofa and do it with other people around, and it's very meditative. I do sort of like mental health, neurodiversity talks and stuff like that, and talking about meditation, about focusing the non-complicated side of your brain, and turning the complicated one off. That's like, oh, I've got to pay this bill and these need washing and the kids need picking up, all that sort of stuff. That you turn that side off and just let the left hand, right hand take over, and you just feel yourself unwind a little bit. So yeah, it's meditative and keeps me busy.
And the rewarding part of leathercrafting is that it yields a tangible output, something you can hold in your hand or give to a loved one. Not to mention that it's opened up James to a new community of friends with a shared interest.
Started out just making like really basic card holders, so like 3 pockets, one either side and one in the middle type thing, practicing stitching, and it kind of evolved into things like little mugs, wallets and backpacks and stuff like that. So just wherever my brain kind of sparked off to, do a sketch and then try and turn it into a reality, which is a lot harder than just writing it down. Easier said than done comes to mind. I myself am neurodiverse, so that whole being able to have something to focus on that has a tangible output, that if you need something quick, you can make something quick, and gets you that really, you can feel literally and figuratively and emotionally, you can feel that sense of achievement. When I start talking about something that I know bits and pieces on or I'm passionate about, there's no stopping me. So like going and meeting like-minded people, and people coming to my stall and asking me about stuff. Yeah, I think that's the real achievement there, is being able to connect with other people and share a little dark corner of the world, or illuminate a dark corner of the world they didn't really know existed.
This is the Ready Test Go podcast, brought to you by Applause. I'm David Carty. Today's guest is leathercrafter and lead UAT Test Manager at Vodafone, James Mortlock. Beyond his testing background, James has experience with automation. In fact, he constructed the first UAT automation of voice assistants via Raspberry Pi. He was also a product owner for analytics implementation, and he was even a Scrum Master. So, you can believe him when he says the purpose of software testing is often poorly understood across the organization, and sometimes even by testers themselves. It's easy to fall into a pattern of behavior and never question why you are performing a certain task and whether it delivers any real value. So, how should we reframe how we look at this critical task of software testing to ultimately deliver more value with the approach? Well, that's for James to know and for us to find out. James, I love the premise of this episode, the why of software testing. So let's start by answering that question. Why do we test software, and what should be the stated goal of testing software?
Interesting question, and it can be as kind of, I guess, as deep and as shallow as you want it to be. But I guess the why probably came from my personality a little bit, because it's just that this constant like why. Like if the answer doesn't kind of solve the solution, I'll just keep going for the solution. Let's kind of start at the big one for me with testing and the way that like development solutions and architecture, everything has evolved. That testing isn't what it used to be. It's not like the developers will produce code, and it, in comparison to modern day standards now, it was awful, and you would need that testing was absolutely required to make sure that it functionally worked, and that's now not the thing. We're now in the state of play where people are like, unit tests, question mark, like, do we even need unit tests? Because the software quality is so high that we're now kind of moving out and up closer towards the kind of UI end of things. So it's completely transformed the kind of like what testing actually means, and the test engineer or just tester doesn't really exist anymore. It's now more like quality assurance, and it's very generalized. Like you can use quality assurance in any industry, any role, and you can have a decent conversation for 95% of it and not need to be in the same industry, because you're there to make sure that you're being an ambassador for effectively doing the right thing. You're like the guardian of the user experience. About a lot of it will be baking in quality right at the start, so making sure that you have quality assurance. Not only you have an actual person that is regarded as quality assurance, but have it there as an ethos with everybody. So you have things like the quality narrative. What's the quality narrative within your company? And it's like, who owns quality? Everybody does, right? If you want it to be fast and cheap and really high standard, like that, it is possible. Just everybody needs to be thinking the right way. So you're not only there to catch the human error right at the start, so static testing, I guess, but you're there to kind of beat it into people, really, so that when the document's then reproduced or the next program or project is started, the level of quality is just higher, even in the documentation process. It's the same sort of idea of like testing was a big thing and unit tests were huge, and now it's the opposite way around. It's the same sort of thing. We're building quality and so that we can focus on improving the customer experience rather than efficiency in lines of code.
Right. And you touched on a few things there that I want to ask you about a little bit later on. But just because we should test software doesn't mean that we should blindly test everything the way that it was done before, right? So how can organizations make sense of what does or does not deliver value when it comes to testing?
See, I've probably touched on this on loads of times that I talk about this, but it's all about the results, and to kind of again talk about it again, because it's quite an interesting topic. It's pulling people's safety blankets away in terms of getting rid of unit testing. Like, how many times have you had a bug that would have gone into production that was caught by unit tests? Like, it may take 45 seconds to run and a couple of minutes to write, but extrapolate that across the lifetime of a project and whatnot is pointless. Like, you should be making sure that you are just the way some of the bigger tech companies have automatic deletion of dead bits of code. Same happens with not only test cases and regression cycles and regression suites, but techniques as well. Like, sometimes techniques will die out and you need to repurpose them or remove them. So it's about making sure that you're not falling into the trap of just because it's quick means it's cheap and therefore just do it. Squeeze every penny, be really really efficient with it. And if it's the pesticide paradox, right? If you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, the bugs are going to get resistant if you're talking about real life, but you're not going to find anything. All the bugs will be where you're not testing. So if you focus on, that's where you've built the quality really really high. If you focus on that all the time, the bugs will be outside of this area. So stop testing there, start testing somewhere else. And if you start to see a re-emergence of issues and bugs, then that's where you have to be flexible and like re-implement new strategies and increase kind of quality assurance in that area. So you don't need to test. Like the testing in theory should just be like testers in theory shouldn't exist. You should be redundant because the quality of the software is so high that you don't need to test anymore, right? That's the idea. We're there as kind of like a backstop. It's not the silver bullet that everybody thinks it is. The silver bullet is better quality. It's not more testing.
Right, absolutely. And that's an interesting idea, talking about unit tests being redundant. And you hit on that a little bit already. Are there other QA techniques or approaches that organizations should take a little bit of a deeper look at in terms of the value that they deliver and whether or not those are redundant as well?
So yes, for every company, like even the ones that are like best in class and even the ones that are just starting up and don't really have any like quality assurance, it's just developer production. But it's like it's going to be one of those cliches, but it's personal to the company in terms of where the quality's been built, and it's where you're not seeing issues. It reminds me very much of I'm not sure if you've seen the diagram of the bombers coming back from the war, and it's showing you where they've been hit, and they've said, right, we need to put armor there. It's like, no, those ones are all the ones that are actually coming back and surviving. Maybe we should put the armor where they're not being hit, because they're the ones that aren't coming back. That's obviously the weak point. We're not seeing the ones that crash because they don't come back. So that must be where the issues are. So that's what we should be doing, using data that's coming back from either testing or production to then be specific in the way that we're armoring our bombers, as it were, because otherwise you just get too heavy, you can't fly as fast, and you're effectively hamstringing yourself by kind of over protecting or over testing, as it were.
And this idea of adhering to your software quality narrative ultimately has a positive impact on everybody, right? I mean, you're all about efficient processes and a thoughtful approach to how you spend your budget, things like this. It's nice to save the business some money, but an efficient approach benefits everybody, right?
Yeah, definitely. So the big one is, or the easiest one to get past the shareholders and seniors is money. It's cash at the end of the day, isn't it? If you can make efficiencies in costs, you're going to probably get stuff signed off. But with that comes, like, say you've got a test environment that's just like, we've got a place called Spaghetti Junction, and it's just a overlap and cross of roads and bridges and whatnot. If you've got an environment that's like that, it's going to be a nightmare being able to keep it in sync, and like your cycle time, instead of being like a day, will be like 10 days because the intricacies are so huge. You go through and rip that out and make it streamlined and efficient. You're going to save the business days and days and days, but also your developers and your QAs are going to be so much happier, because it, like, being able to just test something or just deploy something is going to be so much easier. So you save the business loads of money, then all of your employees within development are like way happier, therefore they're more productive, therefore you make more money. So it's like the infinite reward.
Absolutely. In this idea, this outcome hinges on that shared responsibility approach to digital quality, right? So understanding the why of software testing probably goes a long way toward getting the rest of the organization to buy in, which is what you started talking about earlier a little bit. Beyond that, what else can organizations do to foster this idea of a shared approach to digital quality, and why is that so important?
So long story short is it's cheaper, for one. So if you get whoever writes your initial documentation, whether it's a business requirement document or a user story or a cucumber scenario, whatever it is, if that quality is higher, then therefore it will extrapolate out to less bugs. And you catch all of the bugs, you go as far left as possible and catch as many bugs as you can, because there's QA engineers and developers with the right mindset and software developers in test actually in the kind of sizing and shaping. you're going to add more quality there. It's almost free there because those people are being paid for. You remove that, and if everybody's invested in quality, they'll want to remove those. Whereas back in the day, you would just do your normal dev test, it go into prod, you'd find all the bugs, you'd put them back in. That's a mega expensive way of doing it. That's probably going to get everybody kind of behind it. But again, it's the happiness thing as well. Like you're going to get happier people. You get less of the what is this coming through from the developer being like, this doesn't make any sense. Like this is impossible. It's not going to be a 3-story points. This is like 21 story points. It's got to go back through, and then you get a developer that's interpreted a piece of requirement that they haven't seen yet, or that's been written poorly, and it goes over to test, and they're like, I was in that refinement. This is not what they were talking about. Like, we have to redo this. If you breed this quality mindset rather than just testing and unit test coverage, all that sort of stuff, you get it by being lean, right? Build quality in rather than kind of shoehorning it in the end and trying to manufacture quality.
And this takes time, right? I mean, this takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. You have to win over a lot of hearts and minds. I'm sure that's not always an easy battle, right?
Yeah, definitely. So there's the strategy. There's lots of strategies to go about this. You can be like a belligerent warlord and just battle people until they just surrender, I guess. Or
I'm
you can go
guessing
through
that's
it.
not the way to do it, though. I'm guessing there's a better way.
Well, it depends. It depends how grey you want to be, I guess, and how long you've got. It's one way. It's like hammering a screw into a wall. You can do it. It just won't be pretty. It will probably be able to hold a picture up, but I wouldn't want to put my TV on it. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And you'll make a blooming awful mess. So I went through a transformation, I guess, process with my company, and a secondary one as well in terms of environments, and taking a sales strategy or a pervasive marketing strategy on this is very advantageous, where you go for the early adopters. Like that's the best way to do. You want to incite pervasive excitement. You go to the people that want to do it. You go to them first, and you rally them up, and you pep them up, and then you watch the seniors who weren't involved say, well, all this excitement, and I wasn't involved, and this thing sounds like something that I should be behind, and I should be the sponsor of this, and it's pervasive that way. If you try to battle through the people who don't want to do it, you're going to have a really tough time, and then the propaganda that comes out of that is going to be a bit lackluster anyway. Whereas if you go for the people that are there for quality, they're there because they want to change, because make money or make happy or whatever, that pervasive happiness will be exponential. That's the way I'd go about it. Not just because it's easier, it's just more productive in the long run, for sure.
And at the end of the day, too, it's really all about delivering a product that the customer not only wants, but will want to use. And there's a differentiation there. How can organizations better prioritize the customer's needs as part of their digital quality strategy?
Yeah, I guess this is an interesting one. I've spoken about this, I guess, a couple of times, where you've got to remember you're not delivering code. Code is the enabler to customer experience. So you're delivering, like people say, oh yeah, it's just a user story. You've got to remember, it's like, concentrate. It is a user story. It's a story, right? And it's got to make sense. It's not as a product owner, I want this field to equal that so that this will then have that output. That's not a story. That's just a requirement. You're kind of missing the point of writing things that way. If you're going to do that, go back to just writing requirements. You want a story of a user, and you want to be inclusive of journeys and see how people experience the code, as it were. You need to be kind of thinking like that. You're not a work item machine or a code delivery machine or a user story machine. You are delivering user stories or user journeys that create customer benefit and business benefit. Like, you need to stop thinking like an engineer and start thinking like a customer. That's the big one. We've spent all this time trying to make sure that the code is as great as possible and super efficient and really jazzy with all the new JavaScript and Node functions and whatnot. That's great. We've got there. We can quit that now. Let's have a look at the user experience, shall we?
James, in one sentence, what does digital quality mean to you?
I would describe it like, I remember the first way someone described punk rock to me. It's not just a genre, it's a way of life. And it's very similar. It's not just a title, or it's not just a thing that you say. It's like an ethos. Like people talk about DevOps or Lean or Kanban or whatever. You can't just do it. You need to be it, and the company needs to be there. So yeah, it needs to be like a feeling and a movement rather than like a process, because people tend to switch off from stuff like that, and people are going to need to want to do it. So digital quality is everybody wanting that customer experience at the end, and the employee experience in terms of deployment and delivery being really high quality and very low effort. Like that's the goal, isn't it? We want to get to that, and digital quality helps enable that, in my opinion.
I'll have to follow up with some band recommendations or something like that, James. So stay tuned on that. But let's go to the next question. What is one software testing trend that you find promising?
So I was having this discussion with our principal engineers, and one thing that I'm desperate to talk to them about, and we're going to dedicate an entire working group session to, is mutation testing. So it's kind of like it's when you can crawl and you figure that out, and then you can walk. Yeah, you figure that out. You can run. Yeah, and then there's the sprinting. So don't sprint before you can crawl. So we're not quite there yet. So we need to figure out the running bit. But mutation testing in my opinion, is the next best thing, and it's kind of silly because it's like testing whether your testing is testing properly. It shows like the quality of your testing. So you're purposefully mutating things and checking to see that your quality processes and your testing processes are robust. So it's like the who will guard the guards. Like you're making sure that the guards are guarding properly, and your tests are testing correctly. And mutation testing is kind of like an offshoot of chaos testing. Will check like the robustness of your quality systems. So I'm quite interested in that.
And as we've talked about, there's clearly a need for that introspection, right, and to evaluate your own processes. So that makes sense. James, what is your favorite app to use in your downtime?
I spend a lot of time in YouTube. Really. So yeah, I'm on the beta for YouTuber as well, and have been for a while. I'm testing even when I'm not testing. That's quite sad. Just thought of that. But no, that's just someone that, or if I refer to them, if I'm to personify a company, that's someone who knows what they're doing in terms of, we want to deliver a customer experience. So what do we want them to experience? And it can have bugs potentially, but it's the fact that the thought that has gone in to enrich a small area of an application, that's very important for me. Like one of the earliest moments of that is just excellent kind of moments, is in Slack on the mobile app. If you used to be able to grab the top corner of a picture and then swipe, instead of the picture just falling down, it would spin based on the physics of where you've put your finger and where you've thrown it. Like, it's absolutely unnecessary. I don't need that, but very much enjoyed. And it's that level of detail that I think makes a good app. Like, people can have P1s and P2s and you just say, yeah, it's broken, or the back end's down, but it's the P3s and the P4s that really make an app like outstanding. And that sort of stuff that was obviously like a hackathon, like a hack day thing, that's gone into prod, that's what makes a great app, in my opinion.
It's the little touches sometimes, just those little details go a long way.
Exactly.
And James, finally, what is something you are hopeful for?
Ooh, wow. Something that I'm hopeful for. I guess two of the points that we've touched on today is that quality, like ethos, that mindset is like baked into everybody, rather than it being trying to deliver things and deliver code. It's about delivering customer experience and delivering it with quality. I'm hopeful for that. There's the momentum of that seems to be picking up because we're getting into that area where the old techniques, software quality techniques, are becoming redundant, because that area is just, you've rounded that circle so much, it's absolutely perfectly round, so you can move on to the next shape now. I think that's a big one for me. Almost everything that we've spoken about, I think I'm quite hopeful that the tables are kind of turned from like how much can we kind of plumb into development. It's now like how much can we kind of invest in quality, because it's going to be cheaper in the long run.
Well, James, this has been fun. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and hopefully everybody's learned something or enjoyed it.
Thanks once again to James Mortlock. You can also catch James on a recent webinar he did with Applause called How Vodafone Shifted User Acceptance Testing Left. You can find the link to that on-demand webinar in our podcast notes. Thanks to our producers Joe Stella and Samsu Sala, and our creative team, including Megan Golick and Carly Searles. Hit us with a subscribe, drop a comment, leave a review, or let us know what you think about the podcast by emailing at podcasts@applause.com. We'll see you next time.